You're on a business trip or just have a spare evening and want to spend it at a restaurant, but this time you have no one to go with. I totally understand you. Going to a fine dining place alone might seem a bit confusing. You just come, wait nervously for the food, eat it almost without enjoying the whole meal, pay and go home. It was so, at least for me, when I found myself in such a place for the first time. But then I realized that it's nothing wrong with dining alone, and even liked it. Probably the biggest inconvenience about dining alone is that Michelin restaurants normally don't make reservations for one person. Very often when you try to reserve a place on the website, you can book a table for 2, for 3, for 4. Seems like we're talking about smart cars now. But yeah, sometimes a table for one is just not possible to book. Of course, there is always a solution to mail the restaurant or to make a call and explain that I'm dining alone, could you make an exception for me? And in most cases, the restaurant manager will respond positively to your request. Alternatively, you can just go to another restaurant where the booking policy is not so strict. Personally, I adore small one-star Michelin restaurants, like family-owned ones, because they don't try to show off like some of the biggest restaurants with worldwide famous chefs. They just do what they enjoy doing, share their passion with the customers, and for me, it is the essence of the Michelin Guide. Like, back in the days, a Michelin Guide was just a tiny red book, almost a leaflet, helping people to find a nice place to sleep and to eat. Since then, the philosophy of Michelin has changed a bit, but I think that these one-star family restaurants really keep the old tradition alive. Anyway, dining in a Michelin place alone is not as scary as dining in a regular restaurant alone, because a Michelin dinner is always a presentation. It's like a 7-dish, 10-dish, 15-dish show with the chef coming to your table and asking if you like the dish or not, the waiters and sommelier being extremely charming and always talking to you. You never feel alone in a Michelin restaurant, actually. There is always something happening, like burning, smoking in your plate, so that you never get bored. And despite normal restaurants, yeah, I'm speaking as if Michelin restaurants are not normal. I mean places without Michelin stars. You just order the food, the waiter brings you the food like 10 minutes later, and that is it. Nothing happens, and you just eat alone, and the only way of not being bored is just eat the food and check your social media on the phone or whatever. But it's not the same in a Michelin restaurant. In a Michelin restaurant, once you are finished with the previous dish, there is always some interaction coming. It could be the sommelier who offers a new wine pairing and asking about your experience with the previous dish, or the chef himself or herself. There are a lot of stunning women chefs nowadays. So you feel not like in a restaurant, but more in a theater or some kind of a show where not only your eyes are pleased, but taste bumps as well. Some places even take special care of the people who came alone. They can sit at the chef's table and see the whole process of food preparation there. Probably there will also be some people who came to the restaurant alone, and you can talk to them if you want. I just want to say that dining out alone is not a frightful thing, and there are always a bunch of options. Probably the biggest mistake would be to occupy the table in the middle of the room, because it's quite uncomfortable just psychologically to sit in the middle of a huge room eating something. Of course, people around are doing their thing, they won't be staring at you, but it's not very comfortable, at least for me. But in a good restaurant, a person in charge will never give a solo diner table in the center of the place. It's just a rule of nice manners. When I eat alone, I feel more safe somewhere in the corner behind some kind of a decorative wall, creating some kind of a shelter for me. Another tricky issue is drinking alone in a restaurant. Is it fine for a healthy person to drink alone? In fine dining places, I think yes. Of course, you can have a pair of wine pairings, no problem. I won't go to the bar alone because I drink only wine now and only paired with some food, because basically alcohol is not very good for one's health. But in fine dining places, wine pairing is an indispensable part of the meal, like of the whole show, if you will. So it's not drinking alone, it's tasting alone. You just think that this sommelier is trying to sell us more wine, but no, I'm mostly on a customer side on the restaurants than a sommelier, so I'm on your side. And I believe that it's totally fine to have a glass of young wine or some champagne with a half a dozen of oysters. The point here is that a well-paired wine enhances the tasting experience and makes the show just better. Even in Michelin places, there can be some unconventional wine pairings. I've created a video about such a place. You can easily find it on the channel. But generally, wine pairings in such places are well chosen and the wines themselves are top-notch. In Europe, having a glass of wine with the dinner is a normal practice. Wine is a part of food like it was in ancient Greece or Rome. So it's absolutely fine to have a glass of wine alongside dinner or even lunch. And yeah, speaking about the lunch, sometimes a Michelin star doesn't mean that it's like a nose-up restaurant. Some Michelin star restaurants serve very affordable lunch options for no more than 30, 40 euros or dollars, which is quite a nice place to have lunch. Normally, these offers don't include 10-course meal or even 5 courses. It's like an appetizer, main dish, and some dessert as a rule of thumb. But there are also good news. Lunches are served without previous reservations. Not always, it also depends on the restaurant, and it is A, the most accessible way to eat in a fine dining restaurant, and B, it is the most comfortable way to eat alone in a fine dining restaurant. Like, a dinner in a fine dining place is never less than $100 per person, 150 being the middle price range for one Michelin star in not a very expensive country, probably 200 in Scandinavia or so. So $40 seems like a steal to dine in such a place. And also having a lunch alone is way more frequent than having dinner alone. So there is nothing to hesitate or to be shy of. Fine dining has never been more approachable than now. Especially I love these offers in France because there is a ton of small family-owned restaurants here holding a Michelin star, and they offer lunches just because they are located in some small charming villages with not a lot of people passing by. And for solo diners, it is the perfect opportunity to dine well without spending a fortune and without having all of the eyeballs on yourself in a luxurious capital place. And yeah, picking the right restaurant may be probably the most important thing in feeling safe and sound dining alone. I would personally suggest some unpretentious, preferably family-run one-star restaurant, because at 2 and 3 stars level, the things are starting to get a little bit more like formal. More formal dress, which may be not very comfortable sometimes, more formal behavior. Not always, of course, because there are a lot of like 2 and 3 star restaurants, kind of funky style that make a ton of fun out of the presentation of the dishes and the whole dining experience. But generally, less stars means more approachable place. That's it. Personally, I always wear smart casual, which is quite a safe choice for the majority of one-star restaurants to feel quite comfortable there. Only a few restaurants require formal dress, and for sure these are not the ones you'd like to visit alone, because there you will definitely feel uncomfortable sipping your vintage champagne or whatever. So just make reservation, preferably at lunchtime, dress smart casual, don't pick the table in the middle of the room, and just enjoy the process. I prefer to go dining with my wife, but still dining alone is a nice thing. Don't hesitate to try it. See you in the next video. Bye.